Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in this video I'm doing my February reading wrap-up. I read the entire Impostors series by Scott Westerfeld this month. This is a spin-off of the Uglies series. But before that I read Percy Jackson and Lightning Thief, the first Percy Jackson book, which I gave to my nephew, which is why I don't have it anymore. And this one I had started reading like a few years back, just to like give it a try since this series does have so much hype, and I just kind of missed it when I was a kid. But I don't think I had a physical copy then. I think I was just reading like an excerpt online. And so I only read the first chapter, and the first chapter is pretty intense, and it was just too silly for me, and I was like, I'm not gonna bother buying this. I don't think I'll like it. But then I just got a copy of the first book from a coworker recently when she moved away. So I had it on my TBR and I was like, I'll give the first book a try sometime when I get to it. But then I had a friend invite me to a stage musical of Percy Jackson, and so I decided to go ahead and read the book before going to see the musical. And yeah, I just still felt it was a silly story. It just read a little bit too young for me. I think since I didn't read it in childhood, I just don't have the nostalgia for it, and I just didn't care much for it. It was really hard while reading it not to compare it to Harry Potter, since that is another really big fandom from around that time, a little bit before Percy Jackson, that is also just a really popular children's fantasy. But yeah, this one just, the stuff that was happening in it felt a little bit too unrealistic, too silly, too wild. And also, I just didn't think Percy was as funny as everyone makes him out to be. Like, when people talk about Percy Jackson, they talk about how much funnier he is than Harry, and I just didn't see it. And I'm sure his personality and his wit and his humor might grow a bit as the series continues and he gets older as a character, but I'm just not willing to continue on with the series based on the first one. But it was kind of fun to read it since I did very soon afterwards go to a musical version of it, which was, again, I didn't really enjoy the story much, but the actors were all really good. They were great singers. And of course, it's always fun to see like a book to something else adaptation. So not mad about having read it. It wasn't terrible. It's just not really my cup of tea. And yeah, not planning to continue with the series, no matter how beautiful the spines of the books look on other booktubers' shelves. I do always spot Percy Jackson books on other booktubers' shelves in the background because they do stand out and they are so beautiful. So that honestly is like the saddest thing for me, is like, since I don't enjoy the books, I'm never gonna have their beauty on my shelves. But then after that, I moved on to the Imposter series by Scott Westerfeld. There are 4 books in this series, and again, this is a spin-off of the Uglies series, which is an absolute childhood favorite of mine. The Uglies series is my favorite dystopian series by far. And I think part of what I always enjoyed about that series was how fun it is. Like, a lot of people complain with YA series, especially dystopians or fantasies, that the teenage characters don't really act like teenagers. But in the Ugly series and in the Imposter series, the teenagers really do feel like teenagers. They have their teen lingo, they're still doing like these wild world-saving things, but they're doing it with so much fun in life, and it makes for really enjoyable action. But yes, I had read the first 2 books in the Impostors series previously, and in the meantime 2 more had come out, so I reread the first 2 and then finally read the final 2 for the first time. And the first one was still so much fun. This one is a 5-star read for me, just like every book in the Uglies trilogy. It sets up so much stakes and so much action in literally the first 25 pages. It's got really interesting, great characters with interesting character development. In this series, our main character is a twin, and her sister's dad is like a dictator, and before they were born, his son was kidnapped and he never saw him again, and his wife died trying to save his son, and as she was dying, he like harvested her eggs and made these twins who are our main characters. And he raises one twin to be like his heir and will one day take over his city from him. And the other twin nobody knows exists, and she exists as a body double, basically goes in place of her sister in any dangerous situation where she might get killed or kidnapped. So that already is just such an interesting, complex family dynamic that the series is just kind of built on. But then it brings in this nice kind of Romeo-Juliet romance, which I'm not a huge romance person, but I do enjoy having a nice romance on the side, especially if it's kind of full of drama, things keeping the two apart. And yeah, so just a really excellent setup for this series in the first book. It had some twists that I had forgotten about, and so still had the same impact that they did the first time that I read the book. And of course, it does have some nice shout outs to the Uglies universe, the original series. There's this line in the book that is said a few times, which is slightly spoilery, but the line is, "She's not coming to save us." She, of course, referring to our main character from the original series, Tally Youngblood. I got shivers the first time I read that. And then I was really sad when a character from the original series who was close with Tally shows up and repeats the line, because then I was like, oh, Tally really isn't going to be in this series. And I was very sad, and I kind of mourned the fact that we weren't going to get to see Tally again. So yes, this one every bit lives up to the original series. 5 stars. Absolutely love it. So then after that, I reread Shatter City. And this one immediately is a little bit messy. There are a lot of typos in this book, which I hate to nitpick typos, but there's just a lot. And some of them aren't exactly small typos. Some of them really make you stop and think, what was the author actually trying to say? Because this word doesn't make sense in this sentence, and I actually have to think about what word it's supposed to be. It's not like the type of typo where you just scan right over it and don't even really notice. And then aside from the typos, also the continuity wasn't quite all the way there, which again, you know that it's a mistake and you know what really is supposed to have happened, and it's not a huge deal, but it just makes it feel like the editors just didn't care as much about this series as they did about the Ugly series. It's like they just didn't try as hard. But yeah, there's a scene very early in this book where a character's remembering an event, and it was this thing that happened to these two characters, and they mix up what happened to which character. So just kind of annoying. And then another thing that I honestly didn't even notice until I read it on Goodreads is that one of the characters' names change. And that's a really big continuity error. So we have a character in here that in the first book was named Srin, S-R-I-N, and in this book her name is Trin, T-R-I-N. And I don't know if they just decided that Srin was too hard of a name and they decided to change it, which is not okay. You can't just decide that in the second book, or if it was literally a mistake where they just forgot the name of the character. Either way, it's not great. The action scenes also were just a little bit harder to follow in this book than usual. One of my favorite things about Scott Westerfeld is his action scenes. I'm not a huge action scene person, but like the Ugly series has really great, really fun action scenes. And they're also easy to follow. Sometimes action scenes can be a little bit hard to follow if they're not written very clearly. And in this book, the action scenes did feel a bit messy, and it just wasn't quite as easy to follow as I'm used to with these books. Another thing that started to slightly lack in this one compared to the last one and all the other Uglies books was the character connections. Like I said, these characters have very complex, interesting relationships with a lot of different tensions going on that's really interesting to read. And I don't know, the characters in this book just didn't feel... their relationships didn't feel as interesting as usual, partly because our characters do split up and our main character is kind of on her own for a lot of the book, so that's probably part of it. But yeah, just overall, there was a definite noticeable drop in quality from the first book to the second book. That being said, I did still enjoy it. I did still give it 4 stars. It was still action-packed and fun, but just definitely not what I'm used to from the Uglies universe. And now, heading into spoiler zone, there was a giant twist at the end of this book, something Scott Westerfeld is known for, especially in the Uglies universe, really leaving some big twists to the end of the books, always. But I fell for this one again, big time. So, in the book, we find out that the twins' brother might not be dead. And so as soon as we found that out the first time I read it, I had a character in mind that I thought that it would be. And once again, this time around, I had a character in mind that I thought that it would be. The same character. And I was like, I know who it's gonna be. And was still completely caught off guard when it was not that character, and when we found out that in fact the twins' brother has been murdered already, and we saw it because one of the twins did it protecting the other twin. Because their brother was trying to assassinate their father, but instead their sister was at the event that their father was supposed to be at. So, just a ginormous twist that I didn't see coming, even though I had already read it. You know a twist is either really, really good or really, really bad if it gets you twice, because either it was really, really good and it really leads you off the scent and it's just so totally shocking that it gets you twice, or it was really forgettable and boring twist. In this case, it was a very shocking twist that got me twice. But then moving on, after that, I read Mirror's Edge for the first time. And I was very sad to see the messiness continue, and I just really started to feel like they just didn't care about this series, which was just, I don't know, kind of sad. You want them to care. But in this one, the main character, one of the twins, is going undercover in her father's city. And so it was interesting to see more of Shreve, the city that their dad is a dictator of. It was interesting to see how it works, interesting to see how the citizens live with dust, which is microscopic cameras and microphones all over their city with the same amount as regular dust would be. So literally everyone is being recorded and watched 24/7 at a million different angles at once. And it was really fun. They have this clique in the city called the Futures that are all just kind of performing their life for future historians. And it really kind of dug more into the theme that is explored in the companion novel Extras, in which everyone, how they make money is by being famous. And this book contains a quote that I really love, in which Tally says to the main character, "You'll still be real even with no hover cams watching." And so this click in this book kind of allowed that theme to be explored some more, which I did enjoy. Again, it had a pretty dramatic ending that I didn't really see coming, although what I predicted was actually kind of more dramatic than what did happen. So it didn't feel shocking in the same way that the twist at the end of the second book did. And then of course, at the end of this book, again, spoilers here, at the end of this one, this city artificial intelligence says to the main character, I'm not giving like the background on how this all came about, but says to the main character, "I've always wanted to meet Tally Youngblood," letting us, the reader, know that Tally is going to be in the final book. So that was really exciting. Unfortunately, I already knew that Tally was going to show up in the series because I had seen it on Goodreads. I didn't know it while reading the second book, where they're saying she's not coming to save us, and so that's why I didn't think she would be in the series in this book, because that's what was implied. But yeah, then I saw on Goodreads that she does show up in the series, which of course leads us to the final book, Youngbloods, which is Tally's last name, of course. And I gotta say, I wish Tally wasn't in the series. First of all, I already mourned the fact that we weren't going to get to see her, so I don't know, it just felt like a weird, almost betrayal for them to be like, Tally's not going to be in this series, and then like, tricked ya, yes she is. And then she was really disappointing. Did not like her. She came off kind of as a villain for a lot of the book, which, you know, Tally isn't perfect. Very clear if you read the Uglies series, but her just fully coming off as the villain just felt wrong. They fixed it a little bit at the end when, in kind of an epilogue-y way, they're like, Tally then tried to kill this city AI, but really it was just a warning to all artificial intelligences that she's watching you and making sure you don't make a mess of the world, just like she's watching all of the people of the world. You know, the whole be careful with the planet or things might get ugly thing. So that helped a little bit, that she's just still on her mission from the original series. But there was just so much about her presence in the book that I didn't like. I didn't like what we got with David, of him just not being there and it just being barely explained. I'm not mad about him not being there. I'm mad about the fact that since Tally's the main character, we don't really get anything about why he's not there. We don't really get much about how Tally feels about the fact that he's not there. And so I would rather it just not be mentioned, almost. And then aside from all the Tally stuff, I also didn't really enjoy the plot of this one very much. Like, all of the first three, regardless of how messy they were or whatever else, I did at least enjoy the plot. I still had a fun time. But this one, the plot, I just didn't really care about. So yeah, this one was the least good of the entire series. I think they should have stopped at 3 books with this series and like cut that final line about Tally out so that there wouldn't be a need for the 4th book. Maybe just do a little more wrapping up in the 3rd book and we would have been fine. And so, as a result, this is my lowest rated book in the entire Uglies universe at 3 stars. I don't know if I mentioned I rated Mirror's Edge 4 stars as well, although a kind of a lower 4-star than this 4-star. And just for reference, of course, Uglies 1, 2, and 3 are all 5-star books, and Extras is also a 4-star for me. But overall, I had such a great time being in the Uglies universe again for 4 whole books, or 3 whole books. I'm super excited for the TV show, which theoretically might be coming out this year. I'm just waiting for a trailer. Let me know down below if you're an old school Uglies fan and if you're excited for all the new books and the potential new TV show. I hope you enjoyed watching. Now onto the quote for today's video, which today I have one from The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And it goes, "It is the nature of stars to cross, and never was Shakespeare more wrong than when he had Cassius note, 'The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.' Easy enough to say when you're a Roman nobleman, or Shakespeare. But there is no shortage of fault to be found amid our stars." Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.